I feel like no matter what video of Julian's I seem to watch, there's always a bunch of people in the background yelling overrated. That's all they do is just yell overrated. This is Julian Newman. You've probably heard of him because there's a lot of videos on YouTube about him, and he has millions and millions of views. He's a 5'5" point guard out of Orlando, Florida, who averaged 34.7 points a game for Downey Christian High School in the 2018-2019 season. He has lightning quick handles, an insane three-point range, and for whatever reason, garners a lot of hate. Scroll through the comments section of any Julian Newman YouTube video and you're going to find a bunch of comments like these. Julian is going to be the worst person to play with at LA Fitness when he's older. Poor Julian didn't know at the time that they were just letting him shoot when he was a little kid. Bro, he actually sucks. When he dribbles, he has no direction. He just dribbles to dribble. He loses it every time and never makes a play. Should have been called Julian Newman manages to get a turnover every time he gets the ball. The hate is unrelenting. 90% of the comment section consists of people roasting Julian. Despite all the hate and criticism of him, I think it's time we take a fair and honest look at Julian Newman's game to see if any of his critiques hold weight. After all, he's a very talented player who deserves a lot more credit than he receives. First, let's take a look at some of the things Julian does very well. Julian has an incredible shot. We may not agree with its form, and it may look like he shoots like he's still stuck in the 6th grade, but let's not forget, form isn't everything. If you don't believe me, just ask NBA player Lonzo Ball. He made it to the NBA with one of the ugliest shots ever known to mankind. If we take a look at Julian's stats, this kid shot 1,200 three-pointers over the last 3 years and made 611 of them. That's 51% from the three-point line. 51%! That's insane, and considering the numbers of threes he took and the distance from which he shoots his three-pointers and the fact that he's often busting out dribble combinations before he shoots, which makes it even more difficult to make the three, it's straight up fucking incredible. Hands down. I can assure you none of his haters have anywhere near this percentage, so we simply can't discount his three-point ability. And then look, check out his free throw percentage. It's fucking nuts. 94%, 93%, 94%, and he's shooting a ton of them. I mean, it's unheard of. He shoots the free throw at a higher percentage than Steve Nash and Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf did in the NBA, and these guys are legends. So to pretend as if Julian Newman can't play basketball or he was never that good is absolutely delusional. Now let's move on to some of Julian's weak spots. The first thing that comes to my mind is a peculiar desperation Julian has when he drives to the hoop. It's almost though he's over-dedicated to making a bucket, when in fact, he ought to be looking to pass or looking to pull up for a short jumper or just not looking to drive at all. There are many times when Julian drives to the hoop amongst some of the biggest high school players I've ever seen. I'm talking kids who look like grown-ass men, robust redwoods amongst budding bonsais. And sometimes Julian takes them all on by himself, as if he were the embodiment of a 6'7", 280-pound Zion Williamson. Except he's not. He's 5'5" and probably pushes a $150. I mean, there are times when there will be 3 or 4 big men around him, and he still tries to shoot the ball. This kind of desperate, all-or-nothing driving probably used to work really well for Julian when he was younger and the big men were shorter. But now that he's playing against giants, he needs to reconsider when it's a good idea to drive to the hoop, especially when the entire other team knows he's driving or that he's going to drive. See, that's the thing. Julian loves the isolation, but guess what? When you're 5'5" and not that athletic, you're going to be met with giants when you get to the hoop. If Julian had the hops to dunk the ball at his height and weighed another 20 pounds, I'd say this could be a very different story, but last time I checked, Mr. Newman had difficulty touching the rim. And I suppose now would be a good time to talk about the elephant, or perhaps the mouse, in the room. Julian's size. I feel bad for my man because if he were 6'2" with his range and his three-point percentage and a little more athleticism, he'd probably have a shot at the NBA right out of high school. But Such is not the case, and Julian only stands a meager 5'5" and perhaps weighs at the most 150 pounds if he's wearing his basketball shoes. He's a featherweight, and being small sucks. When you get fouled, even if the foul isn't that hard, oftentimes it messes up your game, throws you off balance more so than it should, and just your size alone sometimes makes it difficult for the ref to call a foul because he can't see you as easily as he otherwise could have on the court. So I hate to say it, because I wish we lived in a world where dedication and hard work were the only necessary prerequisites to success, but in the game of basketball, if you're short as and your name isn't Muggsy Bogues, Earl Boykins, or Spud Webb, things just get harder the shorter you are. The ladies are right, boys. Size does matter.
Size matters.
And let's talk about something else I think Julian Newman is lacking in his game. Defense. Just one word, boys. Defense. Look at this clip right here. You see this? This is a big man going coast to coast right by Julian Newman without anyone stopping him. They were in a 2-3 zone. This man decided not to hustle. These other two gents had someone to guard. They still could have stepped up, but they were under the basket. There's another player off camera over here, presumably guarding someone. So Julian, this one is all yours. Every player who's played his fair share of the game knows stopping the ball is always number one. Time to step up and take the charge, my man. Julian's lack of defense is glaringly obvious. He doesn't have the same defensive tenacity that a Muggsy Bogues or an Earl Boykins has on defense. In fact, I've looked through a lot of Newman highlights, and I can't think of one that involved a defensive play by Julian Newman of any kind. That's why we're sitting here watching Muggsy Bogues and Earl Boykins defensive highlights. It's as though he could give two less about defense. And I'll tell you this much, if I had to play one-on-one versus an NBA player, it sure as wouldn't be Muggsy Bogues. This guy was nasty on defense. Players hated playing against him because he was so quick, and as soon as you put that ball on the floor, you were opening yourself up to having your pocket picked by the quickest man ever to step on the floor of the NBA. Same with Earl Boykins. There isn't a player out there who liked bringing the ball up one-on-one versus Boykins. I've never seen Julian full court press another point guard man-to-man style. It's this kind of tenacity I'd like to see from Newman. And I can assure you it's this lack of tenacity that has probably turned off a lot of potential college scouts from recruiting Julian Newman. Just because you are short and underweight doesn't mean you can't be a tenacious and fearsome player. So we've talked about Julian's desperate drive. We've talked about his size or lack thereof. We've talked about how he doesn't play defense. And I think there's one more weakness of Julian's we need to discuss.
Just letting you choke me, but I don't know. We're taking a picture.
I don't mean to be mean, as I think we all have areas of our life that need work and improvement, and we're all dealing with the scraps we were given and with the hand we were dealt. But I think Julian has a bit of a Napoleon complex.
Napoleon complex is the term describing a theoretical condition occurring in people of short stature. It is characterized by overly aggressive or domineering social behavior, and carries the implication that such behavior is compensatory for the subject's stature.
And look, I get it. I was a short player myself, standing at 5'9" when I wore my basketball shoes with inserts in them. It's tough as being the smallest guy on the court. You can't see Everybody in their tall body is in the way, and every time you take a shot, you got some high-flying totem pole trying to block your You got to box out hard as just to get a rebound, and you got to work twice as hard, if not 3 times as hard, as some blessed genetic freak just to get some time on the court. But that doesn't mean we have to adopt a bad attitude. And I'll tell you this, when it comes to humanity, people straight up hate you for defying the odds, for doing what shouldn't be done, for succeeding when you should have failed, for deciding to play short in a big man's game. Jealousy and envy are 2 of our worst emotions, and we've all felt them and we've all experienced them. And when you act cocky, when you egg the crowd on, when you stick out your tongue, when you bully other players and whine to the ref, It straight up makes people not want to root for you. It makes people not want to root for the underdog. With a touch of humility and some grace, I think Julian could be even more successful than he already has been. He could have those rooting for the other team walking away thinking, wow, I can't believe this guy was so good and yet so damn short. We were screaming overrated and yet he sat there draining threes on our best player. But it's hard. We all have huge egos. And when you're famous, when you blow up on social media and you feel as though the limelight is always on you, your ego wants more and more. It craves it. And it'll do anything to get it to continue its fix. And so perhaps that's Julian's greatest weakness of all. Not his size, not his desperate drives, not his lack of defense, but his attitude.